this first question here is more about, I should say, setting a profit target is pretty simple, and just to note, profit targets are always based on the break even. So, that kind of goes without saying. All right. So when you're setting a profit target, whatever that offset distance is, it's always based on whatever your entry price is, so, but I do appreciate kind of, the level of detail, that people put into their questions there. So really, I think this question kind of hinges on adding more positions here. So now I'll hold off before I get into that. So adding a position, and then adjusting those profit targets, right, when the average entry price changes here, every time you cost average in. And then something a little unusual here, which is there's no stop loss, but the position is to be closed, when there's a loss of X amount of currency, right? X dollars, or, a currency there. So, all right. And then we have a couple of other basic questions there. All right. So, let's start building here. All right. So I already have BlackBird up and running here. So I'm just going to go into the order settings button there, right? And that brings up the BlackBird interface. So first thing we need is basically we need some BloodHound signals. So I'm just going to use a generic BloodHound system that I have here that just produces a whole bunch of signals here. So let me load that in. Let's see. All right, so there it is, the crossover test 2. I thought it was just crossover test. Well, in any case. Okay, so this basically just has a very simple system in it that produces signals whenever the price inflects, or the price reverses direction, or I have one that's not so quite willy-nilly random. There we go, this price inflection with a MACD filter. So you'll see those signals here in just a moment. So that'll be my signal source for testing this here. All right, and then so the next thing is we need an entry order. So there's no entry order specified, so we'll just use a market entry, right? So when you start your order set, you have to determine, are you going to use a market entry, a limit entry, or a stop entry, right? So we'll start off, we'll just build this out with a market entry. There, all right, and so once this internal menu loads up here, then we can go to the profit target here next. So this is a 30 pip, which pips and ticks are the same thing, right? It's the minimum movement of an instrument. Let's see here. So I'm just going to use that, as you saw, I'm just going to use this 10 tick one to get started here. And then open up the profit target and then go into the initial placement, and we're going to adjust that up to 30 there. And we're going to make another adjustment here. So right, so the offset price is the entry price, right? That's the default there. But since we're going to be scaling in, or there might be some scaling in, let's make a subtle adjustment, and let's use the average entry price right there. And then, so this is the initial placement, and the initial placement does not automatically adjust. So if the average entry price changes, the initial placement is not going to change the price of that profit target. That is what the trailing actions tab is for. So if you want an order to move around, you have to use the trailing actions here. So same thing goes for an entry order. If you're using a limit entry order and you want your entry order to maybe follow some kind of moving average, in the entry order, you would have to set up the trailing actions tab, to tell BlackBird that, hey, have my entry order follow this indicator. And so we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to tell BlackBird that if the average entry price changes, then change the profit target. So to get things to enable the trailing actions, we're going to have to set this to custom. And now we can start creating a custom trailing rule here. So we're going to need to, first thing is we need to add a rule. It's like so. Let's stretch this out a little bit. And all right, so it's kind of handy to give some kind of a name, that you can recognize later on. So if you open this, system up a month later, it's good to name, what these, what these trailing rules are doing for you. So let's see. So there's we don't need a trigger. We could put a trigger in there, but we don't really need a trigger. We can just skip that. So a trigger is basically a conditional requirement. So triggers basically look for some kind of other, for some type of condition, that BlackBird is to look for before executing the action. And typically the action is going to be to move your order around. Right? That's the typical action there that most people will use. But there are a bunch of other actions if you really want to get fancy. Like you could play a sound when this trailing rule kicks in. You could post up a chart message, when this trailing rule kicks in. So there are some other kind of notification actions there. But there's also, you could cancel an order. So, we could turn this into a runner, and, we could cancel this profit target and turn it basically into a runner, something like that. You could freeze the order so the order doesn't move anymore. So, right, so there's a handful of things we could do here. But we want to move the order to, we want to move that order to, and so that's the action, is moving the order. And then the move to is where you specify, where are we moving this order to? What's the new price that we're moving to? And so that new price is going to be that average entry. There we go. So we're going to pick the average entry again there. And we also need to put in that 30 tick or pip offset there. Right? So basically, if you might have realized that this menu here with the average entry price and 30 ticks is the same menu as what we saw in the initial placement. Right? It's the exact same menu, right? So we have the select mode is set to price, right? And so the starting price is the average entry with the 30 tick offset. So, all right, so that's our action, and then we're just going to repeat that indefinitely. So, and depending on the type of chart that you're trading there, probably having BlackBird check on each bar if it needs to move that profit target is probably good enough. But if you are trading on really small bars or short time frame, then you might want to have BlackBird check. Let's see here. Yeah, check on each tick of movement, right? So basically, when the market moves, moves up in a profitable direction, then BlackBird will be checking on each tick of movement there. So, depending on, so this is going to be more CPU intensive, but, with a very small order set like this, it's not going to be any big deal, but if you create a really elaborate order set where, I've seen some people's BlackBirds where they get really sophisticated in trying to hedge and all this kind of other fancy stuff, and they might have 10 order sets, and so obviously the more trailing rules that BlackBird has to monitor, obviously that requires CPU processing time. So just be mindful of that. So for this very simple system, not a big deal at all. So, all right, so I'll just leave it like that. And, let's see, one other thing here. Yeah, so since there is no stop loss, but instead we want to close when there's a total loss of X dollars, then we're also going to go into the profit target and make that a trailing rule there. All right, so I'll just kind of keep this simple here, and we'll close this trade out when there's a $100 loss. Right, so the condition that we're looking for is a $100 loss. Right, before we do anything, right, we need to verify that there's a $100 loss. So the trigger, so this is what a trigger event, this is kind of like what the trigger events are for, is looking for those kind of events. So we're going to use the profit and or loss, right? The profit or loss. That's what we're looking for. So we're looking for a loss, and we're also looking for a currency. So, right, you could also look for a profit, or either a profit or a loss. Right, so there's a couple of different modes. And the units, so you could either look for currency, points, ticks, ATRs of profit, or a percentage. So there's other measurement units that you can use as well. So, and then we are looking for a $100 loss. Right, so that's our condition that we're looking for. And then the action is, we don't want to move this order. We want to flatten the position there. Right, so that's one of the actions, is to flatten the position. So, currently, this flattened position flattens the entire position, right? Not just this one order set here. So that'll make a little more sense here in just a moment once I get around to creating the second order set. So, and if you close out the entire position, then obviously there's no repeating this trailing rule anymore. So, these types of trailing rules don't need, or actually literally can't be repeated, right? You can only flatten a position once, right? Once you're out, you're out. So there is no repeat for this type of rule here. So, basically the only type of rules that repeat are rules where you're moving an order around, right? And all right, so that should do it. So that's our closing that out there. All right. So now, one thing to keep in mind is that this one thing to keep in mind is that this profit or loss here, right, has to wait for that loss to occur. So depending on how fast the market is, the market might draw you down to, say, $110 loss. So the loss could jump from, say, $95 all the way down, in one step down to $110. So keep that in mind, that this is not a stop loss. So you're not guaranteed any kind of, you're not guaranteed to get out at exactly $100 when you're doing this type of monitoring, right? And also, this flattened position, right? The only way you can do that is using a market order. So when when you hit the close button, close buttons never guarantee a minimum loss. It basically just executes, or it submits a market order to just get you out at the best available price. And basically that's what the flattened position action is it's basically the same thing as hitting the close button, right? So it just gets you out at with a market order, right? So there's no way, there's no way ever, no matter how you code this up, there's no way to guarantee that you're going to get out at exactly X dollars with this type of situation. The only way to guarantee that is to use a stop loss. And again, stop losses don't even guarantee that either. So, and if you don't understand that, then you should go to the CME's website and read up on how stop orders work. So even stop orders don't guarantee a maximum loss either. So, let me kind of mention some other side notes here, right? So this was, clearly this is intended for Forex here, since it's written in terms of pips. So if you go to the options tab here, we do have a Forex section here where you can set some default lot sizes, right? This is just a default lot size there. And you can see right now it is a mini, I think that's a mini lot, right? So you could increase this to a standard lot, or you could decrease it to a micro and a, what do they call that? A pico lot or something like that, super small. So, right, this latest smaller lot size now that you can trade in. So again, this sets the default lot size for the number of lots here, right? So that will change this display. And of course, you can always go in here and type in, whatever kind of custom lot size you want, right? So I could do one standard lot and then one mini lot, right? So that would actually be 2 lots right there, right? So you can mix and match however you want there. So, but since I'm on a futures contract, I better not submit 100,000 lots. I'll never get filled. So there we go. We'll knock that back down to 1. So, and also, the display mode. So currency is one of those crazy things where, there's lots of different ways to kind of display the lot size. So I think the K notation is probably the most common because it's the shortest, but there's some other display notations here as well, depending on what you like to see there. So, all right. And obviously, I'll just say this anyways, that, BlackBird will update the display if I was running on a Forex chart. But, so BlackBird, is aware that we're on a futures chart. And if you switch over to a Forex instrument, then BlackBird will recognize that and it'll change the display there. So, okay, so now moving on to, adding more positions here. So, all right. So just to note that BlackBird is specifically designed to not keep scaling you in. Most traders don't want to do that because with the futures market, well, actually this is true with Forex, you could quickly get yourself into a margin call if your system keeps adding more and more contracts. So let's actually take a moment here and let's let's reload BlackBird here. So I'm going to reload the chart so we can get BlackBird reloaded. That allows BlackBird to then, let me get rid of that. There we go. Let's get rid of that BloodHound. And that allows, so when you reload the chart, that allows BlackBird to then load in the BloodHound indicator. And let's put this on the price inflection with MACD filters. There we go. Yeah. So as I said, right, this is just a dummy kind of signal system here that produces a lot of signals that I can work with, right? So obviously, if you took entered on every one of those signals, eventually you'd probably run into a margin call. And so BlackBird is specifically designed to not keep entering the market when you have a position open, right? So, at some point way down the future, we will expand that capability and directly address that. So, when you're scaling in and, and a whole bunch of situations, need to be addressed, right? So when you're scaling in, that opens up a whole can of worms. So to properly support scaling in, natively, a whole bunch of options need to be added into BloodHound as well. I'm sorry, added into BlackBird. So at some point we'll hopefully get there. So for now, when you want to scale in, you can only scale in a limited number of contracts, and that limited number depends on how many additional order sets you make here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new order set, and I'm going to copy A, right? Because A already has the profit target trailing rules already set up for me here, right? So if I go into, right, this is order B, so order set B, if I go into that profit target, I can see those trailing rules are already set in there for me. So I'm good to go, right? So, all right, so to make sure that B only gets placed or submitted when the second signal comes in, we have to open up the entry order, and we're going to use the place, right? This used to be called place after. So we're just going to use the what's now called the place. And this option here, this menu right here, basically adds, it's a way to add a secondary requirement before the entry order gets placed, right? So it adds a secondary requirement, and that secondary requirement is, we don't want this entry order to go in on the first signal. We want it to go in on the second signal, on the second BloodHound signal. So what we're going to do, open this up, and this menu here, this is the trigger menu. So you'll see it has all the various different triggers here, right? So this menu is the exact same menu as our trailing actions, right? If you look at the trailing actions and the trigger on, right? These trigger on, it's the same menu here, right? So again, generally speaking, these triggers are just looking for conditions, various trading conditions, market conditions, indicator conditions, trading conditions, right? And so for this second order, we want to look for, let's see, and where is it? There we go. We want to look for a trade signal trigger, right? So we want to monitor the trade signals coming in, right? So BloodHound's providing trade signals, and so we want to monitor those trade signals. there. And what this does is this is a counting mechanism. So this trigger counts the number of BloodHound trade signals that are coming in. And so we're just going to use the default settings here, right? So if we read this out, so when a BloodHound signal comes in, so what it's doing is it's looking for signals after the first entry, right? So order set A is going to be the first entry, and then the next signal, right? The next BloodHound signal that comes in, we're looking for the first one. The first one after the first entry. So keep in mind, after the first entry. So the very first BloodHound signal will execute order set A. And the second BloodHound signal, so once order set A has an open position, then the second BloodHound signal, which is the first signal after the first entry. So, right. So, so that's what we want there, and that adds that requirement there. And so you can see you can increment this number. So we can keep adding a number of positions here and just increment this number, and that will establish how many scale-in orders would be the maximum number of scale-in orders that would be allowed there. So now one thing to note is, right, if you are setting up these scale-in positions, well, these scale-in positions will remain in play indefinitely, right? BlackBird can't read your mind, right? It's just a piece of software. So BlackBird doesn't know when it should no longer be trying to scale in this position. So you have to tell BlackBird that, hey, don't scale in anymore. Don't execute order set B anymore. So you have to tell it, and that's what the cancel is for. So at some point, you need to cancel order set B, or BlackBird's just going to be waiting forever to try and scale in order set B. Until, the one exception is if a BloodHound signal comes in the opposite direction. So in other words, you're kind of reversing your trade. You're going from long to short, or from short to long. If a opposite trade signal comes in, then obviously that's switching BlackBird from trying to go long to trying to go short. Then obviously that BlackBird will have to cancel these pending orders that were trying to scale in long, but now a short signal comes in. So BlackBird reverses everything, or it cancels everything. It cancels all the pending long orders, and then it sets itself up to now start placing short orders. So obviously a reversal signal will cancel any of these pending orders here that are trying to scale in, right? But but if that doesn't happen for some time, then you do need to establish some kind of criteria to tell BlackBird, okay, just cancel these scaling orders and just start from fresh again. So one obvious thing to cancel this pending scaling order is, if our first profit target is filled, then we're done with that trade, right? So we can monitor this profit target, and if it gets filled, then we'll cancel this order set B. We'll cancel this scale-in order. So we're going to go to cancel, and let's see here. We need to switch to the advanced tab, and we're going to cancel this internal trigger here. We're going to delete that internal trigger, and we want to use order status changed. So we're going to monitor the status of this profit target order, right? So we're looking for this order status to change for the profit target. So in the order status changed menu here, first thing you need to do is select the order. Which order do we want to monitor? And so we want to monitor A, right? Order set A, and we want to monitor that profit target, right? And the mode is, what are we looking for? Well, no, we don't want to look for that profit target to be placed. We actually want to look to see if it is filled, right? So when the profit target for order set A, when it gets filled, then then we know that basically our trade's complete there. And so that will then cancel this entry order, right, which will cancel the entire order set. So there we have it. That's it. So we basically have a template set up now. And so now we can just keep making a copy of B to add as many scale-in positions, as you might want. So we can just go, excuse me. All right, man, the air gets so dry during the wintertime. Okay, so to add, a second scale-in contract here, or our third contract, we can just go to order sets, go to copy, and then we can copy B, right? And B is basically the entry order is already set up with the place, right? You can see the trade signal trigger is already set up for us, but we do need to go in there and increment the signal number that we're looking for. So this would be 2, right? So on the second BloodHound signal after the first entry, right? So order set B is the first signal after this entry, right? So order set A is the first entry, right? And so B would be the first signal after A, and so C is the second signal after A. So we just need to increment that, right? And let's see the cancel. Yeah, I don't think we need to modify the cancel. So I was thinking that maybe we should monitor order set B as well as A, but these profit targets are set up to synchronize with each other, right? They're all 30 ticks or pips from the average entry. So if A gets filled, then that means B should be getting filled at the same time. So I think the cancel does not need to be modified. I think we can just leave it like it is. So, and let's see here. Let me just double check the trailing rolls. I don't think anything needs to be monitored for the trailing rolls. Yeah, we could leave that all the same. Although, let's see here. I think technically we don't have to monitor for that $100 loss. Only one of these profit targets need to monitor for that loss. So we could cancel that. That way BlackBird's doing less monitoring. It's less CPU intensive. Just kind of trying to stick with that kind of general policy of not making BlackBird and BloodHound do excessive work that it doesn't need to do, right? It's just helpful for NinjaTrader. Yeah, so we could cancel that. That should do it. And if we wanted to add another scale in, then we could copy C, and then again go into the entry order and make sure we increment the trade signal trigger. Go in and increment that now to 3, so on and so forth. All right, so that should do it. Yeah, I guess I'll save this out here. So we do have there are some other similar workshop videos out there, that talk about the subject of scaling in, things like that. I think this question is unique in that it doesn't use a hard stop loss or a physical. It doesn't use a physical stop loss order. Instead we're just monitoring for a loss there. So this one's a little different than the other questions that we've had. All right, we'll save that out and let's test this and run it. All right, so we have a bunch of long signals. So let's turn on the auto trading there, and we just missed a signal. All right, yeah, we should be, as we can see, this on a 10 range chart, the NQ will kick out a bunch of signals. There we go. Yeah, and hopefully the market will stay kind of range bound here so we can keep getting these scaling positions without getting our profit target hit. There we go. There's another one. And those targets are not synchronizing. Okay, yeah, so that's why you always want to test stuff here. So let's open this back up and move those there. All right, so let's see if I'm missing something here. Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? I was kind of worrying about this. So the action is correct. I'm sorry. Let me go into the repeat process. So I set this up to ticks of movement in a profitable direction. Yeah, you know what? If I had just waited, I think those profit targets would have synchronized if I was just a little more patient here. So what I can do is set this to actually, you know what? Either I could set this to ticks of movement in either profit or loss, so that way things move immediately. But I always try and err on the side of conservative CPU usage. So it's always better off to start off that way and then change things, to a more liberal CPU usage if necessary. So I'm going to go back to just say, let's just update this once per bar. All right, so when a bar closes, then have the trailing rolls initiate after that. So that means I need to go into these others and do the same thing. There we go. All right, we'll save that. And let's try this again. Oh, look, there we go. Okay, great. We have a short position. Although, you know what? Keep in mind that that if you adjust your settings in the middle of a trade, so BlackBird already had a short position open when I was editing this stuff. Changes to your system do not take effect immediately. Right? That's just way too complex of something to handle with the way NinjaTrader is built. So any changes that you make on the fly will only take effect after BlackBird goes flat. So BlackBird must go into a flat position, and then BlackBird will then take up those changes, and it'll start utilizing those changes on the next trade. So and I didn't mention this, but when it was in this short trade, if you notice, that trade was canceled when the market moved up, because it did see a $100 loss there. So actually, I think, yeah, you know what, $100 loss is a little too low for the futures market here. So let me make an adjustment here. Let's see if I have a micro. I don't have any. Oh, there we go. Micros. Yeah, let's switch to a micro contract, so that way we don't hit that $100 loss so quickly. There. All right, so we just got to wait for that data to load in. Man. See how many days of data I got loaded. Only 3 days. All right. All right, let's turn on the auto trader and let's watch it this time. All right, there's, all right, the first position. Oh, shoot, we ran out of long signals here. So, yeah, it's going to switch to short signals. All right. All right. This isn't working out as quickly as I was hoping it would. So, let me try and get some of these other questions answered here while we're trying to watch this here. So, all right, first question is, is this what BlackBird is for? And all right, so there we go. So when this bar closes, those targets should synchronize. There we go. Bingo. All right. So good. We now have those profit targets synchronizing, and there we go. And they got hit. All right. All right, yeah, so back to the second question here. Is this what BlackBird's for? So as I did I did discuss, when starting to answer this, question, or this requirement here of another BloodHound signal coming in. So, technically, no, BloodHound's not directly built to handle scaling in contracts directly. So, using, let's open BlackBird up here, right? So in the entry orders, having this place and cancel option it's a workaround way, for scaling in. So these options were not added to address scaling in. They were added based on just customers essentially wanting to modify their BloodHound signals. So customer would say, yeah, I got BloodHound signals, but I don't want to take all those signal trades. I want BlackBird to somehow magically fix my BloodHound signals for me, and decide which BloodHound signals to take and which ones not to take. That's not really, the strategy is, a strategy is not there to fix your entry signals. Your entry signals should be fixed, with the indicator. So, and that being BloodHound, or what if you're using a custom indicator for your trade signals? Again, it's not BlackBird's, it's not the strategy's job to fix your indicators signals. You need to fix the signals themselves. So so basically, the place and the cancel were kind of like a simple way that we could implement some minor conditional requirements before another entry order is executed. So that's kind of how that came about. Was it was kind of a simple way that we could address those types of issues that people wanted fixed. It was kind of a simple way for us to do this. But also, and so it just happens to be that, in turn, that this works out to also be, that this can be used as a workaround for scaling in as well. So again, to properly address scaling in, the main thing is, the place menu can be better suited. This trade signal one works pretty good, but more importantly, the cancel. More importantly, the cancel capability of saying, okay, don't place any more scale-in orders, or more importantly, not leaving these in a pending state here. So actually, let me show you guys what I mean by pending state. So if you open up the order monitor panel here, let's see. Okay, we need, oh, look at that. We had all 4 orders. Oh, cool. Shoot, I missed that when I was talking. Yeah, we had all 4 scaling orders there, and they were all synchronized. So great. We know it's working. So, all right, so here we go. So here's a new position, right? And you can see that order B is in a pending state, order C is in a pending state, and order D is in a pending state, right? And so they're pending until those those scale-in trade signals come in, right? And so software doesn't know when to cancel that. But obviously, as a human trader, you're going to know in your mind that, okay, I'm not going to add any more scale-in positions. I'm just not going to add them. But software doesn't know when to quit. So to, properly address scaling in, the cancel needs a lot more flexibility to say that it is really fully and properly supported. So for now, we call this basically a workaround for scaling in. And so you just have to be mindful that, if you don't have your cancels set up correctly, that BlackBird's just going to get stuck in trying to, continue that short trade or that long trade, for until all of the scale-in orders have been executed, right? They get stuck in that pending short state. Let's see. I guess, one other thing I'll note, right, is in the profit targets, right, we have the close the trades on X dollars of loss, right? And you'll notice that we put that in the profit target, right? So we put that in one of the exit orders here as a trailing roll, and not in the money management, right? So the money management does not work on an individual trade by trade basis. The money management is there to look at the daily statistics, right? So the daily profit and loss. So the money management doesn't manage individual trades. It manages the gross or net P&L data for the entire day, right? So that's why we're not using this. There you go. The net max loss, we're not using that because that's the P&L that for the day, right? The P&L that shows up in your account for all the daily trading that has occurred. So that's what that is the main difference between the money management versus, individual trade P&L data. So, and obviously this should go without. Sorry, there we go. That's the P&L exit I should have been pointing to. And obviously this should go without saying, but surprisingly, new traders miss this point that every time you add a new contract, since you're using a dollar amount, then that means the price movement gets shorter and shorter and shorter to meet that currency dollar loss. So obviously keep that in mind, that every time you add a new position, that that distance is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter. So, all right. So if you want to keep that loss distance, the same no matter how many contracts you have on, then you can't use currency, right? You have to switch to ticks or points, right? So, and next, here's the big one. Is it possible to run an optimization? And the short answer is no, because NinjaTrader does not work in a dynamic fashion. Actually here, Freddie included a nice screenshot here for me to use, so I don't have to pull up the strategy analyzer. So we have a screenshot, that was taken from the strategy analyzer, set to optimization mode, right? And you notice that, in order to optimize stuff, you have to have hard-coded settings in here. So this particular strategy, QR or GRGR, it's hard-coded to only allow one profit target. So if you wanted, two different profit targets, you couldn't do that. You would have to go in, edit your code, and add and hard code in another profit target parameter there, to enable to do that. Right. So Ninja's, this properties window, as it's called, does not update dynamically. It can't be updated dynamically. You have to go in, edit your code, recompile, and then pull up your strategy again. So I think you have to close the strategy analyzer, open it up again, and then NinjaTrader will recognize that, oh, you added a second profit target, or you added a second stop loss there, right? So because NinjaTrader requires everything to be hard-coded, right? And the beauty of our software is it's all dynamic, right? None of this stuff is hard-coded. If it was, you couldn't do what you can do with BlackBird, right? BlackBird, would only be sold saying, okay, you can only have 3 order sets. That's it. End of story. But that is the beauty of our software, is it's dynamic, and you can keep scaling things up or down as you see fit. Yeah. So basically no optimization, at least not until NinjaTrader improves their platform to make it more dynamic, as far as the properties windows go. Yeah, Freddie's stating that the long and short trades are not independent. So as soon as the signal appears in the other direction, right, in the opposite direction, all trades, any open position needs to be canceled. And of course, there's no broker that I have ever seen that allows you to have positions open in opposite directions on the same account, right? So if you want to do that, as far as I've ever heard, you can only do that with 2 separate accounts. Yeah. So obviously, BlackBird can't circumvent, broker requirements or exchange requirements, as well. That might even be an exchange requirement that you can't have opposite positions open on the same account. So in any case, obviously when a reversal signal comes in, as BlackBird's been trading here, hopefully you have been witnessing that the opposite positions are getting closed out, and then BlackBird reverses the trade. So that's one of those questions we get asked from time to time is, hey, I can't get BlackBird to open a position in opposite directions at the same time. It's like, hey, you got to talk to your broker about that. So that's not something that we can fix. So.